The twin suns hung in the pale sky, their heat pressing down on the dry ground. The wind carried dust across the barren plain where a caravan of raiders moved slowly. Their dark banners fluttered above them, and their beasts of burden snorted and dragged heavy carts filled with supplies. Among them walked prisoners, but one prisoner was different. Her name was Erin, and she belonged to a gentle race known for their songs, their gardens, and their wisdom. Her people were not warriors, yet they had knowledge that many desired. For this reason, the raiders had taken her. She was bound to the largest beast in the caravan, a massive creature with thick hide and a long neck. A heavy rope tied her wrists to its harness, and another rope around her waist kept her from straying. When the beast moved forward, she was forced to stumble along beside it. When it stopped, she stopped. When it lurched, she fell and was dragged until she found her footing again. Her body ached, her skin was torn in places, and the heat of the suns burned against her face. Still, her eyes stayed steady. She did not lower her head in defeat. The raiders laughed at her suffering. They wore armor made from scraps of metal, bones, and hides. Their leader, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, often looked back at Erin with pride, as if her capture made him more powerful. He told his followers that she would fetch a high price, for the clans of the South hungered for secrets from her people. They did not see her as a person. To them, she was a prize to trade. As the caravan moved across the plain, Erin's thoughts drifted to her home. She remembered the tall crystal trees that glowed at night, and the voices of her kin singing in harmony beneath the stars. She remembered the feeling of peace that had always filled her heart. That peace was gone now, replaced by the pain of rough ground under her bare feet and the sound of harsh voices around her. Yet inside, she told herself not to let despair take her spirit. If she let despair win, the raiders would truly break her. On the fourth day of her capture, the land turned to rocky hills. The path grew difficult, and the beast to which she was tied groaned as it climbed. Erin stumbled often, her knees striking against sharp stone. Once she fell hard, and the rope around her wrists bit deep into her skin as the beast pulled her forward. She cried out, but quickly closed her mouth again. The raiders jeered, amused by her struggle, but none offered help. Their laughter echoed among the hills, a cruel sound that only made her more determined to remain silent. At night, the caravan made camp. Fires burned in circles, and the raiders ate roasted meat while boasting of raids and victories. Erin was tied near the beast, given little water and less food. She drank from a cracked cup, the water warm and tasting of dust, but she accepted it with quiet strength. The stars above gave her some comfort, for they reminded her that the sky was wide and full of light, and no chain could cover it. When she closed her eyes, she sang softly in her mind, songs her people used to heal the spirit. Though no one else could hear, those songs gave her strength. Days turned into nights, and nights into days. 10 long days passed in this way, with Erin bound to the beast, dragged across plains, hills, and valleys. Each day tested her more than the last. Her body grew thin, her steps weaker, but her gaze never lost its fire. She watched the raiders, learning their habits. She saw which one carried more food, which one fell asleep too soon, which one listened for danger beyond the fire. She was bound, her mind was free, and she knew knowledge was a kind of weapon. On the 7th day, the caravan crossed a desert of red sand. The wind rose, carrying sharp grains that cut into skin like tiny blades. The raiders pulled cloths across their faces, but Erin had no such cover. Her face burned, and her lips cracked from the dry air. She stumbled again and again, but when the leader turned to mock her, he saw only steady eyes staring back. She gave him no victory. It angered him, for he wanted to see her broken. The beast she was tied to also suffered under the storm. Its eyes blinked against the sand, and it groaned loudly. At one point it halted, refusing to move until the raiders whipped its sides. Erin felt pity for it. Though it dragged her, it too was a prisoner of their cruelty. "Ouch," she whispered gentle. Words to it when no one listened, and in its slow dark eyes, she thought she saw a spark of understanding. Perhaps it too longed for freedom, On the 9th day, the caravan reached a river that cut through stone cliffs. Here they rested longer than before. The raiders bathed in the water, filled their skins, and shouted songs of victory. Erin was tied to a rock while the beast drank deeply nearby. She bent low and touched the river with her fingers, letting the cool water ease her cracked skin. For a moment she closed her eyes and imagined she was home again. But the laughter of the raiders broke the dream. One of them tossed a bone at her feet as if she were less than human. She turned her face away, refusing to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. The leader stood near the river, speaking with his second. They planned to deliver her to a southern clan in exchange for weapons and gold. Their voices carried in the dry air, and though they thought her helpless, Erin heard every word. She knew now what awaited her if no miracle came: slavery or worse. She did not allow herself to weep. Instead, she lifted her chin, letting the suns fall across her face. She told herself again that despair would not claim her. It's somewhere beyond the cliffs and rivers, beyond the deserts and hills, there had to be hope. On the 10th day, the caravan prepared to move again. The beast shifted, the rope at her waist pulled, and Erin stepped forward into the long road ahead. Her body was weary, her lips dry, her wounds aching, yet she walked. She told herself that every step mattered, that every breath was proof she had not yielded. Though surrounded by enemies, she carried inside her the memory of her people, their light, and their songs. That memory was stronger than chains, stronger than pain. It was her shield, and she would hold it until the end. The raiders thought her only a prize. They did not see the fire that still burned inside her. They did not know that the same fire would soon draw the gaze of another. Someone watching from far away, someone whose choice would change her fate. But for now, she walked beneath the suns, bound to a beast, her spirit unbroken, her eyes set on a horizon only she could imagine. The twin suns slowly rose over the horizon, painting the barren land with gold and crimson light. In the distance, rocky hills cast long shadows that looked like dark towers on the plain. From one such ridge, a lone human scout stood with a field lens pressed to his eye. His name was Tomas. He had been sent from a small human outpost to observe the movement of raiders in this region. His orders were clear: watch, record, and avoid conflict. Yet as he gazed down upon the caravan moving across the plain, he felt anger stir inside him. The raiders were easy to identify. Their rough armor, their beasts of burden, and their banners marked them. Tomas had studied their patterns for weeks. He knew they were violent and often struck settlements. But now he saw something that made his heart tighten. Among the beasts and wagons was a figure bound with ropes. It was not a raider. It was a woman of the alien people who lived to the north, her slender form tied beside a beast, stumbling in the dust. Even from far away, Tomas could see her steps were slow and painful. The beast dragged her forward without mercy, and the raiders jeered whenever she fell. He lowered the lens, his jaw set. He had heard of these people before. The locals called them singers because of their voices and their love for harmony. They were not fighters. They welcomed strangers with food and music. To see one of them treated this way filled Tomas with rage. His hand tightened on the strap of his rifle, but he knew he could not charge down alone. The raiders numbered too many. Still, he could not turn away. His duty was only to watch. But his conscience demanded more. Tomas crouched low and began to follow the caravan from the ridge. He kept his distance, moving from rock to rock, hill to hill. His boots left light prints in the dust, and he carried only what he needed: water, dried food, his rifle, and a knife. His training taught him how to move unseen, how to study an enemy until the right moment. As he trailed them, he watched not only the raiders, but also the woman. He saw how she stumbled, yet always rose again. He saw how she refused to lower her head, even when mocked. Her strength was not of the body, but of the spirit. That strength impressed him. During the day, the suns beat down upon the land. Tomas drank sparingly from his flask, always careful to stay hidden. He moved when they moved, stopped when they stopped. At night, he found high ground and kept watch on their campfires. Through his lens, he saw the raiders eating and laughing. He also saw the woman tied near the beast, her body weary, her face turned to the stars. Once, in the silence of night, he thought he heard something faint. It was not the sound of raiders. It was a soft sound, like a hum carried by the wind. Perhaps she was singing to herself. The thought stayed with him and made his heart heavy. On the second night of following them, Tomas considered his orders again. His commanders had told him clearly avoid contact, return with reports. Humanity's place on this world was still fragile. They had come not to conquer, but to live, to trade, and to learn. Many locals distrusted them already. If Tomas acted recklessly, he could bring trouble to his people. Yet as he watched the woman bound in chains, his heart told him something else. To do nothing would be worse than breaking orders. He whispered to himself in the dark, as if trying to weigh the voices of duty and conscience. In the end, conscience won. The days went by. Tomas continued to follow, studying every detail. He counted the raiders 15 in all. Some rode on beasts, some walked. Their leader carried a blade of dark steel and wore the skull of some old creature on his shoulder. 2 of the raiders often scouted ahead. 3 carried bows. The rest bore spears and axes. Tomas marked them in his mind, knowing each would be a danger. He also studied the path. The caravan moved south, through hills, then across desert, then toward a river. If they reached the southern clans, the woman would be lost. He had to act before that moment came. One afternoon, as he lay hidden on a ridge, Tomas lifted his lens again. He saw the woman fall hard against the stones. She did not cry out. She pushed herself up, slow but steady. Dust covered her face, and blood marked her knees, yet her eyes looked forward without fear. Something inside Tomas shifted. He had seen soldiers on battlefields before, men stronger than iron who broke under fear. Yet here was someone, unarmed, bound and weary, and still she walked. To Tomas, that was true courage. He whispered softly, though she could not hear, "Hold on. I will not let this end for you." That night he crept closer than before. The raiders had made camp by a cluster of stones. Fires burned bright and laughter echoed in the dark. Tomas moved silently, keeping to the shadows. He found a vantage point near the edge of their camp. There, hidden behind a rock, he watched her. She sat tied to the beast, her head resting back against its hide. Her eyes were half closed, but she did not sleep fully. Perhaps she feared what might happen if she let herself rest. Tomas's hand brushed the hilt of his knife. Every part of him wanted to cut the ropes and carry her away, but the time was not right. Too many raiders were awake. He forced himself to wait, though waiting hurt as much as any wound. The next day brought a storm. Red sand rose into the air, swirling like fire across the desert. The raiders wrapped cloths around their faces and pressed forward. The woman had no cover. Sand cut across her skin, yet she did not fall behind. Tomas followed from the side, shielding his eyes with his sleeve. The storm gave him some comfort, for it made it easier to hide. Still, his heart burned with anger at the sight of her suffering. He promised himself again that he would not allow this to go on much longer. He would find a way, no matter the risk. On the 6th night, the caravan reached the river cliffs. Tomas crouched above them, watching as the raiders shouted in triumph and filled their skins with water. He saw the leader boast to his men, speaking of the price the southern clan would pay. He saw the woman tied to a rock, touching the river with her fingers as if reaching for memory. Tomas pressed his fist against his chest. He could not wait much longer. If they crossed into southern territory, rescue would be almost impossible. He had to choose his moment soon. That evening he returned to a hidden hollow in the cliffs where he had kept supplies. He laid out his knife, his rifle, and 2 small charges used to distract enemies. He checked them carefully, knowing his life and hers would depend on them. He thought of what his commander would say if he learned Tomas had broken orders. But then he thought of what history would say if humanity came to this world and looked away from cruelty. Tomas believed strongly that the measure of a people was not in their words, but in their actions. He could not be the man who turned his back. That night, as the stars burned bright above the cliffs, Tomas prepared to strike. He would wait for the moment when the raiders slept deepest. He would free the woman from her bonds, guide her into the dark, and lead her north. It would be dangerous. Many things could go wrong. But to do nothing was worse. As he sat in the silence of the night, watching the flicker of firelight below, he whispered once more, "Hold on. I am coming." And in the shadows, his eyes never left her figure bound near the beast, her spirit still unbroken. Soon, very soon, his path and hers would meet, and the fate of both would change forever. The night lay heavy across the desert. The fires of the raiders burned low, their laughter turning into snores, as one by one they gave in to sleep. The stars stretched wide across the sky, their pale light falling on the cliffs and the river below. From his place in the shadows, Thomas watched with steady eyes. For days he had followed, and for days he had fought the voice of caution within him. But tonight was different. Tonight, he had decided, he would act. Erin lay bound near the beast, her hands tied to thick rope, her body slumped in exhaustion. Yet even in weariness, her spirit had not broken. Her eyes lifted often to the stars, as if she found strength there. Tomas admired her courage more than any he had seen before. He tightened his grip on his knife and whispered to himself that he would not fail. He moved slowly, silent as the night breeze. Every step was placed with care, his boots brushing sand without sound. The raiders lay scattered around their fires, weapons beside them. The leader rested near the center, his heavy blade across his lap, his chest rising and falling in deep sleep. Tomas counted each guard. 2 still sat awake, one chewing dried meat, the other staring into the flames. They were tired, but they were alert enough to be dangerous. Tomas slid behind a cluster of stones. He placed one of his small charges there, a device meant not to kill, but to flash and roar, creating confusion. He set the second farther away, near a fallen log. His plan was clear. Cause distraction, take down the guards quickly, and free the woman before the rest could rise. It was a desperate plan, but it was the only chance. He waited until the clouds shifted and covered part of the moon. Then he pressed the switch. A sudden flash burst from the stone, followed by a sharp crack. The sound split the quiet night. Both guards jumped in alarm, eyes turning toward the noise. Before they could recover, Tomas moved. He rushed from the shadows, his rifle lifted. The first guard fell with a strike from the butt of the weapon. The second turned, mouth opening to shout, but Tomas's knife pressed against his throat before a sound escaped. The man dropped without a cry. Erin's eyes widened as she saw him for the first time. At first she thought it was another raider, but then she saw his face, human yet unfamiliar, and his calm gaze. He cut her bonds quickly, whispering only one word. "Quiet." She nodded, her hands trembling with sudden freedom. For 10 days she had been tied. Now her wrists felt light and strange. The beast stirred as the ropes fell, its heavy body shifting. It gave a loud snort that shook the air. Some raiders turned in their sleep. Tomas cursed under his breath and grabbed Erin's hand. "Move," he said. Together they slipped into the shadows of the rocks. Behind them the leader stirred. He rose with a growl, his eyes flashing as he noticed the empty place beside the beast. "The prize," he shouted, his voice cutting through the night. "They have taken the prize." The camp exploded into chaos. Raiders grabbed weapons, beasts roared, fires flared higher. Tomas pulled Erin along narrow paths between stones, his mind racing. He had hoped for more time, but now every moment was danger. He led her toward the ridge, where the land sloped upward and gave cover. Erin stumbled, her legs weak after days of dragging, but she refused to fall. Each time she wavered, Tomas steadied her, urging her forward. Shouts filled the night. Arrows whistled past them, striking stone. One grazed Tomas's shoulder, but he pressed on, teeth clenched. He knew the raiders would not give up. They wanted her too much. They would hunt until blood was spilled. When they reached the ridge, Tomas set off the second charge. A roar echoed from the fallen log, sparks lighting the ground. Beasts screamed and bolted, trampling through tents. Raiders shouted in confusion. For a moment it slowed them, but the leader's voice rose above the noise, commanding them to chase. The hunt was on, Tomas and Aaron climbed higher. The stones cut their hands, but they did not stop. From above, Tomas saw the river twisting like silver in the moonlight. If they could reach the far cliffs, they might hide in caves he had scouted days before. He guided her that way, moving as fast as her strength allowed. Aaron struggled for breath. Each step burned, her body weak from hunger and wounds. Yet she held on to Tomas's hand and forced herself to follow. Her heart pounded with fear, but also with new hope. For 10 days she had known only chains. Now, a stranger risked his life to free her. She did not understand why, but she trusted him. Behind them, the leader and his raiders climbed after. Their voices drew closer. Tomas stopped at a narrow ledge, raised his rifle, and fired into the dark. The sound echoed like thunder, and one raider fell with a cry. The others hesitated but pressed forward. Tomas fired again, forcing them to duck. Then he turned, urging Aaron onward. Keep moving. Do not stop. They ran until the ridge broke into open land. The desert stretched wide before them, empty and cold under the stars. They had little cover here, but speed was their ally. Tomas led her across the sand, listening always for pursuit. His shoulder ached from the wound, but he ignored it. Survival mattered more than pain. As they crossed, Aaron spoke for the first time, her voice soft and strained. "Why?" she asked. "Why help me?" Tomas glanced at her, his face firm. "Because it is right. No one deserves chains." Her eyes searched his, and she saw no falsehood there. She nodded, her spirit stirred by his words. For the first time since her capture, she allowed herself to believe in freedom. Hours passed as they moved through the desert. When the first light of dawn touched the sky, Tomas found a hollow among the stones. They hid there, resting for the first time. Aaron drank from his flask, the water cool against her dry throat. She whispered a quiet thanks, her voice trembling. Tomas only nodded, scanning the horizon for signs of pursuit. The struggle was far from over. He knew the raiders would not stop. Their leader was too proud, too hungry for power. He would chase them across plains and deserts if needed. Tomas also knew Aaron was weak, her body pushed beyond its limits. Every choice now mattered. If he moved too fast, she might collapse. If he moved too slow, the raiders would catch them. As the sun rose, Tomas studied her face. She was weary, yet her eyes burned with quiet strength. He felt respect grow in him deeper than before. She was not just someone to save. She was someone who carried within her the spirit of her people, a spirit worth protecting. He adjusted his rifle and looked to the horizon. The struggle had begun. From this moment onward, every step would be a battle for her freedom, for their lives. And perhaps for something greater than both, far behind. The raiders gathered their strength, their leader swearing vengeance under the rising suns. He raised his blade to the sky and promised his men that they would hunt the human and the alien, until both were broken. But Tomas did not fear the hunt. He had chosen his path. With Aaron by his side, he would face the struggle ahead, no matter how long or how hard. For he believed that sometimes the greatest fight was not with weapons, but with the will to stand against cruelty and the courage to protect what was right. And so the struggle began. Under the burning light of the twin suns, with two figures moving together across the endless land, one human, one alien, both bound now not by chains but by hope. The suns rose again, burning hot and merciless over the desert plain. Tomas had slept little, always alert for the sound of pursuit. He sat on a stone ledge at the edge of the hollow, rifle across his knees, while Aaron rested in the shade of a boulder. Her breathing was steady but shallow, her body still weak from the long days of captivity. She had walked farther than her strength allowed, yet she had not once asked him to leave her behind. That silence told Tomas much about her spirit. When she opened her eyes, she looked at him with calm resolve. "They will come," she said. Tomas nodded. "Yes, they will not stop until we make them." She pushed herself up slowly. Her legs trembled, but she stood straight. "Then we must not stop either." Her words gave Tomas new energy. He rose, scanning the horizon. He knew they had little time. The raiders would have regrouped by now. Their leader was not the type to accept defeat. Tomas remembered the man's voice shouting in anger as they escaped, and he knew that voice would drive the raiders to hunt them without rest. The two began to move again, keeping close to the rocky paths that cut through the desert. Tomas guided them north, toward cliffs he had studied before. He remembered caves hidden within the stone, places where they might hide or make a stand. Each step was slow for Erin, but she never faltered. She leaned on determination as much as her feet. By midday, dust rose in the distance. Tomas paused, his eyes narrowing. "They are close," he said quietly. Erin followed his gaze and saw faint figures moving on the horizon. The raiders had found their trail. They hurried on, climbing the slope of the cliffs. The sun pressed hot against their backs, and loose stones rolled under their feet. Tomas carried most of the water, offering it to Erin often, though. He drank little himself. Her hands trembled as she accepted, but each sip gave her strength to go on. Behind them, the sound of horns echoed, deep and cruel. The raiders had seen them. Shouts rose, carried by the dry wind. Tomas's jaw tightened. He turned to Erin. "We must reach the caves before they cut us off." Yeah. They climbed faster, breath coming hard, muscles burning. At last they reached the mouth of a narrow opening in the cliff. Tomas led her inside. The air was cooler here, the stone walls close and dark. The tunnel stretched deeper, twisting into shadows. "We can hide here," Tomas said, "but they will search." Erin placed her hand on the wall, her fingers tracing the stone. "Hiding will not stop them. We must break free." Tomas looked at her, surprised by her strength. He nodded slowly. "Then we will fight on our terms." He set to work quickly. From his pack, he took the last of his small charges, placing them at the tunnel's entrance. He positioned stones to fall if touched, creating a trap that might slow their pursuers. Erin helped, moving rocks despite her weakness. Though she had never known war, her mind was sharp. She learned quickly. As evening fell, the sound of the raiders grew louder. Their torches glowed in the fading light as they approached the cliffs. Tomas guided Erin deeper into the cave, setting their place behind a bend where shadows would hide them. He readied his rifle, his knife, and a small supply of ammunition. He counted silently 15 enemies against 2. Yet numbers did not always decide fate. Courage often weighed more. The raiders reached the entrance. Their leader stepped forward, torch in one hand, blade in the other. His voice echoed against the stone. "You cannot run, human. You cannot hide, singer. Give her back, and I may let you live." Tomas stayed silent. Erin stood beside him, her eyes steady. She whispered softly, "He will not let us live. Do not answer him." The leader gave a signal, and 2 raiders moved into the cave. They stepped carefully, eyes sharp. The first trap sprang. Stones fell from above, striking them down with a crash. Dust filled the tunnel, and shouts rang out. Tomas fired once into the dust, the shot echoing loud. A raider fell with a cry. Chaos filled the entrance. The leader roared in anger, driving the rest forward. They rushed into the tunnel, torches flaring. Tomas pulled Erin back behind the bend. "Stay low," he said. He fired again, each shot sending sparks of fear through the raiders. The narrow walls kept them from surrounding him. Their numbers mattered less here. Still, the fight was hard. Arrows clattered against stone, and one struck near Tomas's arm, grazing his skin. He gritted his teeth, refusing to falter. Erin crouched behind him, her hand pressed against the stone. She whispered words in her own tongue, soft and steady, as if her voice itself gave him strength. The raiders pressed on, their torches lighting the cave. Tomas used every trick he knew, shooting, retreating, striking from shadows. Each time he fought, Erin moved with him, quick to follow, never slowing him down. They became more than 2 strangers. They moved as if bound by trust. At last, when the fight pressed too close, Tomas triggered the final charge. The explosion roared, filling the tunnel with smoke and fire. Raiders cried out, stumbling back. The leader himself was thrown against the wall, his blade clattering. The cave shook, and stones fell from the ceiling. Now, Tomas shouted. He grabbed Erin's hand, pulling her deeper through a hidden path he had scouted before. They ran through the twisting tunnel, smoke swirling behind them. The cries of the raiders grew faint as the stone collapsed, sealing part of the way. When they emerged, it was night again. They stood on the far side of the cliffs, the stars bright above. The desert stretched quiet, the sounds of pursuit muffled by the rock between them. They had broken free for now. Erin bent over, breathing hard, but she lifted her head quickly. "You saved us," she said. Her voice trembled, but not from fear. Tomas shook his head. "We saved ourselves, together." She looked at him, her eyes shining in the starlight. "I was a prisoner, bound and dragged. But tonight I walk free. I will not forget this." Tomas glanced back at the cliffs. He knew the raiders were not finished. Their leader had survived. The fight was not over. But tonight was victory, a small but powerful one. They had broken through chains, through fear, through pursuit. They rested a short while, drinking the last of the water. Then Tomas rose. "We must reach the outpost. Once we do, they will not dare follow." Erin nodded, standing with him. Her steps were still weak, but her spirit burned brighter than before. Together they set out across the desert night. Behind them, hidden within the broken cave, the leader of the raiders rose slowly, his face cut and bloodied, his rage like fire. He swore to himself that he would not rest until he had taken back the prize. But under the stars, Tomas and Erin walked side by side, no longer bound by chains or fear. They had broken free, and in that freedom lay the promise of a greater future. For the first time, Erin felt hope not only for herself, but for her people. And Tomas felt certain that humanity's place on this world would be written not in words, but in acts of courage such as this. Their breakout had begun a story larger than either of them could yet see. The morning sun rose slowly over the horizon, painting the desert with soft gold and pale pink. Tomas and Erin had walked through the night, guided by memory and instinct, until they saw the distant outline of the human outpost. Its walls stood firm against the wilderness, a small sign of order in a harsh world. Relief stirred in their hearts. They knew the journey was not yet complete. Erin's legs ached, her feet raw from days of walking and dragging, yet her eyes were steady. She had learned to trust Tomas completely. He had risked his life to free her, and in those 10 days, she had come to understand a side of humanity she had never known, a side that could be brave, patient, and compassionate. She moved carefully, following his lead, and allowed herself to believe that she might find safety at last. Tomas scanned the path ahead. Scouts often patrolled the area, and he knew they could not rush. He kept his rifle ready and his senses alert. Every rustle of the wind through the sparse trees or brush made him tense, expecting the raiders to appear at any moment. Yet nothing came. The desert seemed to hold its breath, waiting. When they reached the gates of the outpost, guards spotted them immediately. Erin's appearance, dusty and battered, caused initial hesitation. Tomas raised a hand to signal that she was not a threat. Slowly, the guards opened the gates, letting them pass inside. For the first time in days, Erin felt solid ground beneath her feet without the threat of ropes or violence. Inside the outpost, she was led to a small medical area. Humans there examined her wounds, cleaning cuts, bandaging scrapes, and giving her water. Tomas watched from nearby, silent as she rested. Her breathing grew steady, and a small warmth returned to her pale skin. When she could speak, she did so softly. "I never imagined such care existed outside my people," she said. Tomas nodded, feeling the truth of her words. In this moment, he realized that what he had done went beyond rescue. It was more than freeing someone from chains. It was showing that humanity could be more than survival, it could be compassion and courage. News of the escape spread quickly. Other humans in the outpost gathered, curious and wary, but they learned the story from Tomas alone. He told them of the raiders, of the desert chase, and of Erin's strength. As he spoke, people listened with respect. Not only had a human risked life for an alien, but the alien had survived with dignity and courage. It was a rare story of bravery and trust that stirred hope in everyone present. Meanwhile, Erin regained some strength. She walked among the humans cautiously, observing their ways, their small acts of kindness, and the disciplined structure of the outpost. She spoke little, but her presence alone reminded everyone of something greater, an opportunity to build bonds between species. She began to share knowledge of her people quietly with the scholars of the outpost. Her voice carried the wisdom of generations, ideas of harmony, art, and sustainable living. Humans listened eagerly, realizing that the value of her people was not only in survival skills, but in thought, creativity, and vision. Tomas found himself by her side often, guiding her through the outpost and keeping watch for any signs of raiders. Yet he also listened to her, learning her perspective on the land, the desert, and her people. The bond between them grew stronger, not born of fear or obligation, but of mutual respect. He came to admire not only her courage, but her intelligence and calm under pressure. Days passed. The outpost began to prepare for the possibility that the raiders might return. Scouts were sent further into the desert, patrols increased, and the humans and Erin worked together to set traps and defenses along the paths the raiders might take. She showed them ways to move quietly, to use the landscape as protection, and to conserve energy while remaining vigilant. Tomas watched her teach and guide the humans with patience and authority. He realized that even after everything she had endured, her strength had only grown. Finally, the day came when the outpost received word that the raiders had been driven back by another human patrol farther south. The leader had survived, but his numbers had dwindled, and the threat to the outpost was greatly reduced. Relief settled over everyone, yet Tomas and Erin knew that caution would always be needed. Trust and vigilance were part of survival in this harsh world. In the calm after danger, Erin spoke with Tomas alone. "I never thought humans would be willing to act for another's sake," she said, her voice carrying a mixture of wonder and gratitude. Tomas smiled. "Not all humans are like the raiders," he replied. "Some will risk everything for what is right. Then perhaps there is hope for my people, for yours, for all who suffer in silence." Tomas nodded. Together, they looked out over the desert. The plains stretched endlessly, harsh and unyielding, yet alive with possibility. Erin realized that humanity was not only a people of machines, settlements, and exploration. It was a people of choice, capable of courage, kindness, and justice. Her people had thought humanity distant and unpredictable, yet now she had witnessed something remarkable: the strength to protect and to care. Even when it came at personal risk, weeks passed. The outpost and its humans learned from her, and she learned from them. Tomas helped organize patrols and trade with local settlements, ensuring that all could benefit from the safety and knowledge they shared. Erin taught gardening techniques that conserved water, simple technologies that harnessed natural forces, and strategies for living in harmony with the land. Slowly, the two communities began to see the value of collaboration. Erin's presence became a symbol not just of survival, but of the possibility of unity. Where once humans had been outsiders, she now saw them as allies. Where once her people had feared betrayal, she now felt trust. She realized that her journey had led her to a new beginning. Tomas had been the catalyst, showing by example that courage and humanity were stronger than cruelty and fear. On one evening, under the twin suns' fading glow, Tomas and Erin stood on a hill overlooking the outpost. The air was calm, the desert quiet except for the gentle hum of life returning. Erin spoke softly. "You changed everything for me," she said. Tomas shook his head. "We changed it together. Your strength made this possible." She looked out over the land, a mixture of reflection and hope in her eyes. "I will carry this back to my people. They must know that humans can be allies, that freedom and courage exist outside our borders." Tomas smiled faintly, feeling the weight of those words. "Then your story will be remembered, not as a tale of suffering, but as proof that courage and humanity can prevail." As the sun disappeared behind distant hills, the outposts glowed warmly with fires and lights. Erin stood taller, her wounds healing, her spirit renewed. Tomas watched her, feeling pride not just in his actions, but in what they had accomplished together. They had faced cruelty, danger, and exhaustion, yet they had emerged stronger. The desert was still wide and unforgiving, but now it was also filled with possibility. The story of the alien woman and the human who saved her spread quietly among neighboring settlements. It was a story of courage, trust, and the choice to act when faced with injustice. People of all species began to see that humanity could stand for something greater than survival, that humans could be protectors, allies, and friends. In the end, Erin knew her journey had changed more than herself. It had shown that compassion could cross the boundaries of worlds. Tomas knew that the simple act of standing against cruelty had created ripples that would reach far beyond that desert. Together, they had written a new chapter not only for their lives, but for the connection between their peoples and under the twin suns. The world seemed a little less harsh, a little brighter, because of the courage of one human, the resilience of one alien, and the choice to act when it mattered most.